Assalamu alaikum. This complex video was difficult to make due to the nature of the information and how often it branches out. So how far to follow a certain path was difficult to decide. So just keep this in mind as we dive headfirst into this amazing mathematical matrix. First off, let's keep in mind that human DNA is made up of 23 pairs of chromosomes for a total of 46. The first verses ever revealed in the Quran are the first 5 verses of chapter 96. The name of the chapter is Al-Alaq, which Allah tells us is an early embryonic stage from which humans are created in the womb. This stage of pregnancy fits perfectly with the definitions of what constitutes a alaq, but that is beyond our mathematical interest here. Yet, in brief, this stage is after the early human embryo is implanted in the lining of the uterus called the endometrium, where all 3 meanings of alaq perfectly apply to it. Al-alaq means a leech-like thing, an attached clinging thing to something else, and clotted or congealated blood. As discovered by science during this stage, the embryo both looks like and behaves like this. Furthermore, it's worth noting that the first word ever revealed was the word read, which also means recite. This is very revealing, but it too is beyond our focus here. What is of interest, and the first amazing find, is that this word, alaq, is the 9th word in this chapter. Remember that prime numbers are a main key in Quran mathematics. We realize that the 9th prime number is 23, which is the number of human DNA chromosome pairs. The verse is literally saying Allah had created humankind from a alaq, which is the 9th word, and 23 is the 9th prime number. Another highlighted observation was by Sheikh Bassam Jarrar, who uses the method of counting the hamza, highlighted that the numerical value of the name Adam as written in the Quran is also 46. Of course, Adam is the father of humanity. This is amazing because the Quran specifically spells it with 2 letters A, the first being in the form of a hamza. Of course, the end of a successful alaq is birth, and of relevance to note here is that the word for giving birth has a specific form which only appeared once in the entire Quran. It appeared in the 2nd verse of chapter Al-Ikhlas, which is a 4-verse chapter. It is the word yalid, which is a 3-letter word in Arabic and means birthing, i.e. giving birth. This word, birthing, came before 7 words and after 7 words, making it the central word in the chapter. Of even greater consequence is that its central letter, which is an L, came exactly after 23 letters and before 23 letters. So the unique one-time use of this form of word for giving birth has a beautiful ring composition. It is centered between the numbers 23, which correlates to the 23 human chromosome pairs. Furthermore, as highlighted by those at Quran Way, this letter is very unique in this chapter, as it is not only the central letter, but also has, or is, the only letter in the entire chapter pronounced with what is called a kasra in Arabic, which is in writing is portrayed by the dash under the letter. So this one-of-a-kind word in the Quran is centered in the chapter, and its central letter is unique in its chapter and turned out to be in the exact center of the word for birthing. It is in the exact center between 2 pairs of 23, and humans, of course, give birth after 2 pairs of 23 chromosomes unite and form a human being. This is truly a stunning ring composition, which highlights in numbers the unity of 23 pairs of chromosomes in human reproduction. Furthermore, regarding 7 words before and 7 words after this word, I would add that 7 is not just a main key in Quran mathematics, but rather with regards to the creation of Adam, or in the womb, there are 7 stages. Avoiding what can be a rather large digression into the very short chapter 112, let us return to those first ever revealed verses of the Quran and examine the findings of the researchers from Quran Way, who count letters based on grammar rules. Those first verses ever revealed came in chapter 96, which only has 18 chapters after it in the Quran. What is amazing is that this is the only chapter in the entire Quran that starts with a verse which has a total of 18 letters. What is even more astonishing is that this chapter obviously contains the first letter ever revealed in the Quran, which is the Alif or A, starting its verse. The letter Alif or A repeated in this chapter 61 times, and this is the only chapter which has the letter A 61 times. The number 61 is a prime number, and its order within prime numbers is 18. In my book, I give more amazing details here, but before we forget these highlighted numbers, and that the first verse ever revealed is the only verse, number 1, in any chapter with 18 letters, let's go to the first chapter in the Quran. In chapter 1, the 18th word is the word Ihdina, which in Arabic means guide us. And this also makes it the 18th word from the start of the entire Quran. So the first verse ever revealed had 18 letters, and the 18th word in the Quran is specifically this word Ihdina. We look at this word's letters and their common Hija'i alphabetic order, and we are shocked that their sum total is 61, which again is the 18th prime number. This is stunning, but what happens if we see how many times this word's letters appear in its chapter, which is chapter 1? It turns out that their sum total is 72. So what is this about? Shockingly, 72 is the exact number of words in the only chapter in the entire Quran that starts with an 18-letter verse. Yes, it is chapter Al-Alaq, and it has 72 words. This is truly shocking. The first verse ever revealed is 18 letters in chapter 96, which took us on a journey that emphasized both 18 and 61. Then, in the first chapter, the 18th word letters both give 61 and the number of words in chapter 96. The code is stunning and far beyond human capacity. But now let us add that 72 is not only the number of words in chapter 96, but also a multiple of 18. This of course is because 72 is equal to 18 times 4. Amazingly, 18 is the order of the word, and 4 is the number of letters that make up the 18th word. But is that all there is? What if we try to multiply 4 by 72? This gives us 288. 288 is shockingly the total number of letters in chapter 96. What words can do justice to this? Just like the DNA code, its parts have multiple functions and readings. But it simply does not end. The word Ihdina has led to so much, and upon further analysis, the scholars found that in the entire Quran, it only appeared twice. The only two verses in which this unique word appeared in are verse 6 of chapter 1 and in verse 22 of chapter 38. When we repeat our previous approach and count how many times its letters appeared in both verses, we are shocked to find that their sum total again gives us 61. This is amazing, and I would add that interestingly, I noticed that we got here from chapter Al-Alaq, and Alaq is the early embryo in human pregnancy. And chapter Al-Alaq, as we said, started with an A, which appeared there 61 times. Then here I saw that in the only two verses this word appears in, its first and last letters, which are both an alif, repeated exactly 23 times, which is the number of chromosome pairs in humans. But why am I making this connection when no one else had noticed it? Throughout my videos, I have sprinkled my own findings or observations when merging the best findings done by others. But am I here reaching for straws and standing on weaker ground to make this connection? Can I reinforce this connection and show that the letters' repetitions are indeed connected to the human embryo and its chromosome pairs? Look again at the results in the chart. The first and last letters are 23 each, which are the two pairs of human DNA chromosomes. The second letter got 3, and Allah tells us, subhanahu wa ta'ala, that the embryo develops in 3 layers of darkness. Allah mentioned this when He said in the Quran, He creates you in the wombs of your mothers, creation after creation, within 3 layers of darkness. Scientifically, this correlates to the mother's abdominal wall, the uterine wall, and the amniotic sac. The second from last letter got 7, and we already mentioned that in Islam, the stages of human creation are 7. And finally, in the center is the number 5, which is a main Quran mathematical key, and also the 5 pillars of Islam, the 5 prayers demanded on human beings, and so on. But of more relevance may be that this also can be related to the 5 senses humans have: sight, hearing, touch, smell, and taste. Again, this leaves me speechless. But I wondered, is there even more to this number 5? It is central in this matrix. So I took this to the next level with amazing findings. I found that amazingly, the last 5 chapters in the Quran are a total of 23 verses. Then I was further amazed to see that the last chapter with 5 verses has 23 words. Then I found that the last verse in the Quran that has 23 words is a verse number 5. Furthermore, I remembered that the human develops in 3 layers of darkness, and the last 3 chapters that have 5 verses each also have 23 words. I also found that the last verse to contain this 18th word, ihdina, is also 23 words. Subhanallah, it's simply endless. Then when I counted from the end of the Quran, the 23rd verse has 5 words. In fact, when I then counted all chapters in the Quran which have 5 verses, their total words are 99. Subhanallah, 99 is the number of Allah's blessed names. Furthermore, 9 plus 9 takes us back to 18. And the only chapter with 99 verses, its last verse, 99, has 5 words. And amazingly, the last verse, numbered 99, in the Quran has a total words of 23. Keep in mind that 5 was in the center of all this, and it's from a 5-letter word made up of 4 letters from the alphabet. Look at this, it's simply stunning. Remember this connection between 5 and 4, but for now we must move on. So let's return to those findings by those from Quran Way. The researchers remembered the connection between 18 and the first verses revealed, chapter 1, and so on. So to that end, the scholars looked at the first verse in chapter 18 in the Quran and repeated the same method. Amazingly, they are a sum total of 18. The stunning code is endless. What else logically or intuitively merits further examination? This has been about the first verse ever revealed in the Quran and the first chapter of the Quran, and the Quran is 114 chapters. So we look at the first verse in the Quran, that is verse number 114, and repeat this method. Amazingly, we again see 61. Yes, amazingly, the letters of the 18th word repeat in this verse a sum total of 61, which is the 18th prime number. And we have already highlighted much about 18 and 61. What more can I say which I have not endlessly repeated? Subhanallah. But look closer at the repetitions. I notice that amazingly they are a ring composition. The third letter from both the start and the end repeated 3 times. The first and last repeated 21 times each, and the second from first and last repeated 8 times each. We have followed 18 and 61 far enough, so let us return to the mathematics of human creation. What follows was based on my interest in genetics, which led me to look further into this and highlight certain points that I have never seen highlighted before, although some have pointed out the sex determination factors in the relevant verses. In the Quran, other than the original creation of Adam and his wife Hawa, the main terms used for creation of human beings from man and woman are two. One is mani, which is the sperm, and the other is nutfa, which in this context is the single sperm, because nutfa is singular form. Note, in the past before powerful microscopes, it was believed that the single form of nutfa with regards to many, i.e. sperm, means one drop, but now it is clear and evident that the single sperm is the single sperm cell and not one drop. Anyway, as for many, it is neither singular nor plural, for it is simply the noun for what the male emits as a whole. Basically, just keep in mind that if a nutfa is specified as being from many, i.e. sperm, this makes it a single sperm cell. But if not specified as being from sperm, it could be, depending on the context, a single sperm cell, or the egg, or the fertilized egg called the one-celled zygote, which is that first single cell that is a result of a sperm nutfa merging with a female nutfa. It's like the word particle in English. You need to specify what type of particle it is. I should also note that there's a nutfa phase, and the nutfa phase does continue even after the zygote starts multiplying until it reaches the alaq stage. Having highlighted this, now let's move on. Since sex cells only contain one pair of 23 chromosomes, it is amazing that in the entire Quran there are only 2 verses which contain both words together. Furthermore, and of greater consequence, is that throughout the entire Quran, the first verse that contains both words together is also the only place which specifically gives details of what determines gender in human creation as male and female through reproduction. The amazing thing is that this verse is number 46, and as stated, humans have a total of 46 chromosomes. This is truly amazing, but why stop here? Researching this, I found that the numerical value of the 4-letter word nutfa is 539. So what is 539? From the start of the Quran, the 539th verse is a verse number 46. This is amazing. The word is 4 letters, and the chapter is 4, and the verse number is 46, which again is a total number of chromosomes in the united nutfa, when it means the first cell. The word nutfa, numerical value, gives the order of the verse from the start of the Quran. The mathematical harmony is miraculous. Then I remembered that, as mentioned, sperm and egg nutfa, unlike normal human cells, have only 23 chromosomes each, because they will join and together make the full set of 46. So is there a chapter that contains the word nutfa 2 times? Shockingly, I found that throughout the entire Quran, there is only one chapter that has the word nutfa more than once, and it was in 2 separate consecutive verses. The stunning thing is that not only are these 2 verses together, but amazingly the chapter is chapter 23. This is miraculous, perfect harmony, but it does not stop. When I counted the verses, some as they are 13 plus 14, I of course got 27, which is a main mathematical key, thus further confirming their connection. But is there more to this 27? Shockingly, I saw that 27 is the sum total of words in both verses. The code is beyond words. This tight connection made me look closer and see that the sum of the individual numbers that form these verses numbers, 1 plus 3 plus 1 plus 4 equals 9, and 23 is the ninth prime number. Furthermore, I multiplied the chapter number, i.e. 23, by both verse numbers. 23 times 13 equals 299, and 23 times 14 equals 322. The difference between them is 23, which again is the number of human DNA chromosome pairs. This again is truly amazing, but again, it's endless. Of relevance to point out is that in the earlier mentioned unique verse in the Quran, which is verse 46 in chapter 53, Allah was specifying what determines the sex of a child. To address this, there are a few points that those of unfamiliar with this topic should know. Through advanced genetic and reproductive scientific research, we now know that the sex of a child is determined by which sperm cell from the father reaches the egg, and not the egg itself. This is because humans have two chromosomes which are responsible for, through the grace of Allah, for determining the sex of a child. They are called the X and Y chromosomes, based on their shape. Men have both X and Y, while women have X and X. So when a woman produces an egg, it takes half of her genome information, and either way ends up having an X sex chromosome, which is the female chromosome. Men, however, having both X and Y chromosomes, produce sperm cells which either have an X or a Y. When millions of these sperm cells are released during intercourse, they race towards the egg, and if a Y carrying sperm reaches the egg, the child becomes male, while if an X carrying sperm reaches the egg, the child becomes female. This was all only recently discovered, but in the Quran over 14 centuries ago, Allah revealed this fact. This was in verse 45 and 46, which contain both words, which in English one means the ejaculated sperm, and the other means the single sperm cell. Allah said in the Quran, subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He creates the pairs, the male and female, from a nutfa when it is emitted. Literally, a nutfa from the emitted sperm into the womb. Note, nutfa often translated as sperm drop, but in Arabic it is tiny singular form, specified here as from sperm. Tumna is the action verb from the word many, i.e. sperm, which means emitted or ejaculated sperm. So, the verses are literally saying that it is the singular sperm from emitted sperm that dictates the sex becoming male or female. This is truly miraculous. Or does anyone think that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had powerful microscopes and discovered the DNA code? Or does anyone claim that he further discovered that male sperm is what, through the will of Allah, dictates the sex of a child? How can the Quran be this specific about it? And why would a man over 14 centuries ago go out of his way to highlight this? It is nothing but the book of Allah, who knows best His creation. Yet, as always, the code is endless, and when I counted the total words for these two verses, there were 9, and the ninth prime number is 23. Then, when I looked deeper, I found that this verse, 46, is not only the total number of human chromosomes, but it also is verse 4,830 from the start of the Quran. So what about it? Amazingly, the greatest common prime factor of 4,830 is 23, i.e. the number of human chromosome pairs. Then I saw that the smallest common prime factor of 4,830 is 2, and of course 2 times 23 is 46. So amazingly, not only is it verse 46 in a chapter, but from the start of the Quran, its verse number's greatest prime factor is 23, and the greatest and smallest prime factors give both the verse number in the chapter and total chromosomes in humans. Looking even deeper, I was astonished to see that all prime factors of 4830 are 2, 3, 5, 7, and 23. This is shockingly harmonious with what I previously highlighted. But here, we also have the number 2, which is very appropriate because here it is about determining the two sexes, male and female, by unity of pairs from the male and female. But also, as stated, 2 times 23 is 46. This again is beyond perfection, and it ties perfectly with my previous observations. Moving on, I remembered that when we last saw the number 5, it was all about the last mentions and appearances, so I turned towards the last mention of nutfa. It came in verse 19 of chapter 80, and 19 is a main key in Quran mathematics. Then I found it very interesting that the number of words in this verse, 4, plus number of letters, 15, also gives 19. Of perhaps greater consequence is that if you remember, chapter Al-Alaq, which was where we started, has 19 verses. This evident recurrence of the main key, 19, certainly meant we should dig deeper. So I added the number of words in the verse to the number of the verse, and amazingly, this equals 23. Subhanallah. Again, we get the number of chromosome pairs in humans. All of this highlights this verse even more, so I dug even deeper. This verse, which has the last mention of nutfa, is verse 5777 from the start of the Quran. This is an interesting number because it only has 2 prime factors, both of which are prime numbers. They are 53 and 109. So what is 53? Amazingly, the 53rd verse from the start of the Quran is verse 46, thus again giving the total chromosomes in humans. Yet both 53 and 109 are prime numbers, and their order among prime numbers is 16 and 29. Like DNA, it is all interconnected. But what does this mean? To answer this, we go to the first mention of nutfa in the Quran, and here are the numbers. It is in chapter 16. It has 29 letters, and first mention was 4 words, and this is verse 4. So the code of the last mention of nutfa points at the math of the first verse with the mention of nutfa. Yet 29 is also a prime number, and its order is 10. Amazingly, the 10th verse from the start of the Quran has exactly 46 letters. I also found it interesting that chapter 10 has 109 verses, and its verse 29 has 10 words. But let's move on to something truly stunning. Here is another shocking find of mine. As repeatedly mentioned, 46 is the total number of DNA chromosomes for humans. So I counted all verses numbered 46 in the Quran, and they turned out to be 50 verses. 23 is the number of DNA chromosome pairs in the humans, so I counted all verses numbered 23 in the entire Quran, and they turned out to be 74. Stunningly, we see that between 50 and 74 are exactly 23 numbers. Are there sufficient words to describe how stunning this is? Let me just repeat this and let the numbers do the talking. The difference between all verses 46 and all verses 23 equals exactly 23. I would like to wait a little and let this sink in, but we must move on. Going even further, I found that throughout the entire Quran, amazingly and harmoniously, there is only one verse, number 23, which also has 23 words, because in one human being there are only one pair of 23 chromosomes. I also found that throughout the entire Quran there are 3 verses numbered 46, which have 23 words in each. Wondering about this, I added these numerically connected verses, numbers, and did the same for their word numbers. 3 46s equals 138, and 3 23s equals 69. So what about them? Surprisingly, the greatest common prime factor of 138 is 23, and its lowest prime factor is 2, and humans have 23 chromosomes 2 times, i.e. a pair, and the sexes are 2. In fact, looking even closer at all prime factors of this number, we find there is one more, which is 3. And these verses are 3. The prime factors for this number are 3, and as stated, 3 is the layer of darkness in which the baby develops. Look at this. Like much else we have discovered, it's simply amazing. Of course, those mathematicians amongst you already can see that for 69 there are only 2 prime factors, and they are again 23 and 3. Subhanallah. Then when I added 138 plus 69, which is basically adding the 3 46s and the 3 23s, I of course got 207. 207 has only 2 prime factors, and amazingly, its greatest prime factor is again 23. But what is even more amazing is how exactly 207 is a multiple of 23. 207 equals 23 times 9, and 23 is the 9th prime number. Need I even comment on this? Can any words I say do justice to this miraculous, harmonious mathematical code? Let me add that the prime factors of 207 are 3 to the power of 2 and 23. So again we have 3, which as stated is the number of layers of darkness the baby develops in. But pay close attention here to the smallest details. 138 also had 3 as a prime number, but it's the sum of just one group, which is the 3 numbers 46. But 207 is the sum of the 2 groups together, and it perfectly is 3 to the power of 2. Subhanallah. Have I used the word breathtaking yet? So having been created, the child has 4 limbs and on each 5 fingers. The uniqueness of human fingertips is well established now, and investigators use fingerprints to help them find criminals. It is this uniqueness which Allah addresses in the Quran and says, I swear by the day of resurrection, and I do swear by the self-reproaching soul. Does man, a disbeliever, think that we shall not, again after death, assemble his bones? Yes, indeed, we are most capable of perfectly restoring even their very fingertips. So let us get to the amazing mathematics and what the scholars of Quran way have found regarding this. In verse 4, Allah states that He is capable of to perfectly recreate every human being, including the fingertips. The stunning mathematical harmony is as follows. This verse from the start of the Quran is verse number 5555. Can you see it? Yes, this is truly amazing. It is verse 4 in the chapter and verse number 5555 in the Quran. And humans have 4 limbs, 2 hands and 2 feet, with 5 fingers on each. Stunningly, the verse literally specifies fingertips. And it is both verse 4 and 5555. So 1 5 for each of our 4 limbs with 5 fingers each. This amazing code is truly mind-boggling and again beyond human capacity. How can it be both verse 4 in its chapter and verse 5555 in the Quran? But this is the Quran, and the miraculous is never ending. So we go deeper and find that the word fingertip is word number 20 in the chapter, and you know that 20 equals 5, the number of fingers on each limb, times 4, the number of limbs. This is stunning. The number of fingers on each limb multiplied by the limbs gives exactly the order of the word fingertips in the chapter. This miraculous harmony is stunning. In fact, the word fingertips itself in this verse is exactly 5 letters, and total alphabetic letters used are 4. it's truly endless. Now remember that I told you to keep in mind that 5 was in the center of all those earlier findings from a 5-letter word made up of 4 letters from the alphabet. Now, having mentioned all that we have about fingertips, let me add my own observations to this. In total, there are only 4 chapters in the Quran that have 5 verses each. Subhanallah. But let's get back to the finds of Quran Way, who use grammar rules when counting. They note that this verse is amazingly 23 letters. Furthermore, this word for fingers is also mentioned in one more other verse in the Quran. So we go to that first mention of fingertips in the Quran, which was in verse 12 of chapter 8. The last verse which mentioned fingertips is the verse we addressed, which is verse 4 in chapter 75. Examining both verses which mention this word for fingertips, we see that amazingly the first has 23 words and the second has 23 letters. Subhanallah. This of course matches the 23 pairs of human chromosomes. So what can confirm that this is an appropriate mathematical explication? Let us use the key word which unites the two verses. The letters used to make the word banan, fingertip, are ba, noon, alif. Shockingly, they repeated in these two verses exactly 46 times. Of course, you know that 46 is the total number of human chromosomes. This is truly stunning. The words used to make one verse are 23, and the letters used to make the other are 23, and the letters used to make the word that unites them appear in both verses 46 times, i.e. 23 plus 23. Subhanallah. Think about this. It's shocking. Who but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who created the DNA code, can do this? If this is not shockingly miraculous enough, this word and the 2 chapters it appeared in are chapters 75 and 8, and the sum total of the 2 chapters numbers is 83. So what is 83? The number 83 is a prime number, and shockingly, its order among prime numbers is 23. At any point we can stop, and it's way beyond human capacity. But as often stated, the code is endlessly miraculous. Now think about this. Fingertips were only mentioned in chapter 75 and 8. It is amazing that the first mention was in chapter 8, which is the only chapter with 75 verses, and 75 is the number of the only other chapter this was mentioned in. I will add here that in chapter 75, the 8th verse has only 2 words and 9 letters, and we already know that 23 is the 9th prime number. I also found that chapter 74 has 40 verses, and verse 40 in chapter 8 has 46 letters. Thinking about all this leaves us truly speechless. And as a bonus, I'll add these quick, amazing points. In episode 8, we saw that the first and only mention of bees was not only in chapter 16, but from the start of its verse up to and including the word, the bees are exactly 16 letters, and male bees have 16 chromosomes and females 16 pairs. Now think about this. The first mention of monkeys came in this verse, and the number of letters from the start of the verse up to and including the word monkeys is 48, which shockingly is the number of chromosomes in monkeys, i.e. chimps and apes. This of course is absolutely stunning. Then I looked and found that donkeys have 62 chromosomes as 2 pairs of 31 chromosomes. In the Quran, I found that donkeys are mentioned in 4 verses, but the first is a singular possessive and the second is alongside horses and mules. So we are left with the last 2 mentions of donkeys in the Quran. Shockingly, the last 2 mentions of the word donkeys in the Quran are in chapter 31 and 62. This is shocking because if one was to assume that one was by chance, how can both be either in chapter 31 or 62. The perfect mathematical harmony is beyond words, but to further confirm our path, we see that the verse in chapter 31 has 11 words, and 31 is the 11th prime number. Then the verse in chapter 62, its words and letters sum equal 127, which is a prime number, and its order is 31. We have long passed the shocked and speechless state, and we simply say, Subhanallah. It simply does not end, and so I turned to the wolf in the Quran and found that it was mentioned 3 times, and its first mention was in verse 13 of chapter 12, which amazingly also has 13 words, thus clearly highlighting this number. Then when we multiply 13 by the number of mentions for wolf in the Quran, which by the way are all in the same chapter, we get 39, and shockingly, wolf DNA has 39 pairs of chromosomes. Of course, in total they are 78. Even more shocking is that 13 is also the greatest prime factor of 78, which is the total chromosomes of a wolf. And 78 only has 3 prime factors, and wolf, which has a total of 78 chromosomes, is mentioned in the Quran 3 times. Subhanallah. How can an illiterate man over 14 centuries ago do this when he ﷺ could neither read nor write? How can the only letter with a kasra in chapter Al-Ikhlas be in the exact center of the chapter and the exact center of the word for giving birth and have exactly 23 letters before it and after it? How can the Quran specifically spell Adam in a way that gives it a numerical value of 46? How can the details of embryology be so precise and simultaneously encode for 23 and 46? How can fingertips have such a perfectly miraculous code that also simultaneously encodes for 23 and 46? Go back and review this massive web of the miraculous. Only he who created the DNA code with parts that also have multiple functions each and can read or function in multiple ways have revealed this. It is the endless miracle that will never end and keeps on giving. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, "We will show them our signs in the horizons and within themselves until it becomes clear to them that this is the truth. Is it not enough that your Lord is a witness over all things?" Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll do my best to make shorter videos. And as always, and it truly helps a lot, please share this with your friends, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and until next time, Assalamu alaikum.